Hey there, hope you're doing well. My name is Michael and I'm the founder of Prospectology. We help fintech clients and companies build the top of their funnel without increasing their headcount. So this video is going to be about the three different ways we use at Prospectology and when I was working at Bootstrap Startups, the three channels I used to build the top of the funnel. And a little bit about my background. In the last 5 to 6 years, I worked in Bootstrap Startups across SaaS, fintech, and most recently payment startups. So with all that wealth of experience in the trenches, I'm now going to be creating some content like this on YouTube for you guys to have a watch. So what are the three channels to help build the top of the funnel? So very simple. This is very clear. This is not teaching you guys how to suck eggs, but it's sometimes we need to have reminders, and this will be a good reminder in this video. So the three ways we do it is cold email, LinkedIn outreach, and also cold calling. So before we get into the nitty-gritty stuff and the actual detail of this video, before we do any type of outreach, we need to remember that if your data that you source is not good, i.e. the enrichment that you do, your list building, the personas that you find, the emails that you find, the mobile numbers that you find, if that data is not good, all of your outreach is irrelevant, right? So it's all irrelevant if your data is not good. But in 2025, we now have a lot of different, various different workflows, or there are various different ways to pull in good data sources. We're never going to get it 100% correct, of course, but there's definitely a better workflow or better workarounds that we can use today in 2025. So first and foremost, what do? So we map out the ICP, right? So initially, we would look at the TAM, so the total addressable market, so all the pool of companies you can actually go after. Then secondly, you would map out your ICP, your ideal customer profile, number of ways to kind of do that. And then we also look at the personas, so the job titles or the responsibilities or the roles at that industry or within that company, that care mostly about the solution or the service that you're offering. So we like to create a multi-persona hypothesis here at Prospectology. If we're going to market into a completely new vertical with no experience, we need to kind of pre-predict which roles and responsibilities in that company are going to care mostly about what we're offering today. But again, that could be a video for another day. But simply mapping out the ICP can be like industry, revenue, so firmographics, headcount, job title, location, pain points, tech stack, and all these things will help you map out what does your ideal customer profile look like. And if you have no social proof in your in that sector that you're going after, what we can do, we can reverse engineer, look at our competitors' case studies, build a lookalike campaign. So looking at their case studies, their testimonials, which we can actually pull from with the likes of Clay or using AI to research that at scale. And we can look at these things, these data points, and then what we can do is essentially reverse engineer and make a campaign based on companies that look like the companies your competitors are serving. So therefore we can serve similar pains for similar customers, right? So that's kind of just something to add there. Secondly, share content where they hang out. So this is going to be more relatable to LinkedIn, of course, LinkedIn outreach. But if your ICP hangs out on X, it makes sense to go on X and create your content around there. If they're on Reddit, go ahead and create a community and make comments on them communities in various different ways. So share content where they hang out. And the reason we do this is because we want to, one, build authority, two, have some sort of content where the prospect can actually see. So when you're reaching out, it's not so much of a cold outreach. So we want to make sure that we have some content available so we know we can build authority, start to build a platform to be a thought leader as well. So I'm in the process of trying to build my platform. I'm not going to say I'm an elite at the minute or elite status. There are some really, really cool LinkedIn experts have really cracked it. But yeah, we digress. So then we want to be using enrichment tools. Like I said, if your data is not good, your outreach is irrelevant. You can have the best email copy, you can have the best messaging, you can have the best one-liners. If it's not reaching your ICP or your personas, it's irrelevant. So we can use various different tools, Prospeo, BetterContact, just to name a few. These are more contact intelligent tools to find email addresses, LinkedIn URLs, and also mobile numbers. But I would say Clay is like the brain behind the go-to-market, where we can kind of hyper-personalize your ICP or your one-liners at scale. It connects with over 150 different sales tools, but it takes a long time to be in tune with it. So I'm trying to become a Clay expert. I'm not there yet, of course, but we're trying to get there. like I mentioned in just a second ago, we want to craft one-liners. So we want to research something like a trigger-based outreach, which I'll go into a bit more detail on the cold email section. But we want to find a piece of information, a variable that's relevant to the key stakeholder or the prospect, that we can talk about in our copy, in our email copy, in our LinkedIn outreach, that's relevant to the key stakeholder that will get their attention. So today in 2025 and in previous years as well, there is so much noise in the inbox. So how do we actually stand out from the inbox? And don't get me wrong, email, a lot of people say cold email is dead, cold calling is dead. We're hearing that a lot, especially on LinkedIn. And it's an emotive suggestion to kind of get to drive some sort of controversial thoughts, right? So I truly believe that cold email is not dead, neither is cold calling, neither is LinkedIn outreach. But if we mix all three of these together with a multi-channel approach, we just increase our chances of getting a reply. But the one-liners, the triggers, trigger-based outreach is very, very big right now. We're here at Prospectology, we like to do both. We keep things simple, and we also do trigger-based outreach as well. So very interesting to kind of mix the two. But again, if you're going to market into a completely new sector, I would A/B test, different things to get some results and try to spot some patterns along the way. And then we want to push all these data points. Once we've enriched the data and we've manipulated to the end result that we want, we'd push it into either Instantly, Smartly, or HeyReach, whatever platform you're using as your sending tool. And then what we want to do lastly is pair that with a strong offering plus social proof. So if you're serving or if you're reaching out to a prospect with some social proof, make sure the social proof is something similar, or you've solved a similar problem for a similar customer in a similar vertical, right? And yes, people say so there's no point putting social proof, everyone's doing it nowadays, but really it works, right? So the customer wants to know why you're reaching out to them, what is the value proposition, and have you solved a similar issue for a similar company? Very simple. So let's move on to cold email now, right? So cold email is something that I've used in bootstrap startups, and I've had some really good success with it. So this is kind of my framework. Again, there's no one shoe fits all. There's a lot of cold email experts out there that have different views. I'm just giving you what's worked for us here at Prospectology and what's worked for me at bootstrap startups in the past as well. So let's start with the subject line. So in my opinion, your subject line needs to look like an internal, like the prospects received an internal email from a colleague, right? And that will get their attention. And the way you can do that is a 2-word subject line that's relevant to the key stakeholder, to the prospect, that looks like an internal email to get their attention, right? So if it's like 5 words or 6 words of wordy, they're going to know it's spam. They're going to know it's a sales email, right? So just try to avoid that. Keep it short, under 85 words, mobile friendly. Everybody has different views on this. A lot of cold email experts say do 70, do 80, do 90. I find that under 85 words works, and it's enough characters for me to get my message across. So what we mean by keeping it mobile friendly, we want to make sure that your email copy, once your prospect looks at it on their phone, because I guarantee you a lot of your prospects and your ICPs are going to be looking at their email address on their phone first, because we're so addicted to our phones nowadays. And our first protocol when we receive an email is to check on our phone. It's just a lot more easier, right, than going on the laptop. So make it mobile friendly. Make sure it fits the screen of your mobile so your prospect can quickly skim it, get the information that they need, and quickly make a decision where, okay, this is relevant to us. Let's go, let's jump on a call, or let's initiate a conversation. And a lot of people just do spray and pray tactics. They like to talk about their solution, me, but let's make it about them. So we need to make sure that the structure is revolved around the trigger. Like I spoke to you, like I said in the start of the video, we want to make sure the trigger is relevant to the key stakeholder. So the variable is relevant to the key stakeholder. And I'll give you an example. So we sell open banking payments in one of our previous startups, and we was like always up against the likes of your Stripes, your Go Cardless, Adyen's. Even though it's open banking is slightly different to these different payment providers, open banking would provide a cheaper solution, right? So if I can go ahead inside Clay, for example, at scale, use Built With or Zenrose, for example, and I can pinpoint what tech stack they're using at checkout. If they're using Stripe, I know for a fact that they're going to be charging 1.5% plus 20p as a standard, right? Unless you're a really big enterprise customer and you've got different rates. But 1.5% plus 20p is very expensive. And if we observe that, so let's say we know we get built with, or Zenrose, and we find the tech stack that they're using, if it's Stripe, if it's Go Cardless or Adyen, we can actually comment and say, oh, saw you're using X at checkout. We can actually do that manually as well, by the way. So we can actually go through the checkout situation on an e-commerce site and actually find out, who they're using at checkout. And if they're using Stripe, we know straight away they're very expensive. And open banking, as an example, can provide hell of a lot more of a cheaper solution compared to Stripe. So observation/trigger. So trigger-based outreach is very big. Observe or have a trigger that's very relevant to the key stakeholder, to the prospect. That's a variable, whether it's hiring, tech stack, or funding. In the example that I just gave, I looked at their tech stack, their payment provider at checkout. We use that. We then tie that to our solution. We also include social proof. So we helped company X do this, and Y was the result. Very simple. And we quantify it and link that back to the solution or the problem. Cost of inaction. So in the case of Stripe, if they're using Stripe constantly, we could say, look, if you keep using Stripe, you will be burning through a lot of revenue and profit. Therefore, you should, take a chance at looking at a different solution. So that's a very vague example, but yeah, cost of inaction, why now and not later? So why do they need to start? Why do they need to use your solution as opposed to later? And what's the result going to be later on, which is obviously will be a bad result. A soft CTA, soft call to action, every single every email expert, copywriting expert would say, don't ask for a call straight away on the first few emails. Have a soft call to action. So maybe share something of value. So always share value up front. It could be, there was this document on open banking. Open banking has 13 million users, and the trajectory is going higher. Would you like me to share the report with you? Just as a very vague example. Or it could be, we did a check on your tech stack. Something is broken. Do you want us to go ahead and fix this for you? So just giving you something. So always give your prospect some sort of value up front, a call to action, a soft call to action, as opposed to just quickly asking aggressively for a call to get to, no one's going to give up their time unless you give something of value first. And then what we want to do is personalize each persona's priority. So segment all the messaging based on the persona. So with the multi-persona hypothesis, which I'll do a video for another time, but if you've got finance guys, you've got operation guys, and then you've got your C-suite guys, all these different sets of personas are going to care about different things. They have different roles and responsibilities in their industry or in their company, sorry. So therefore, we need to segment and tweak the messaging based on their profile, right? So we can use Clay to do this at scale. We can segment each profile and create different one-liners. So therefore, we segment the messaging because, like I said, what the finance guys are going to care about would be slightly different to what your operation guys care about. And lastly, write like a human, right? So copy, mirror your client's linguistics or lingo. Write like a human, like you're speaking, not a robot. If you're robotic, it could be AI that's created it. AI hallucinates a lot. We still know it does. I wouldn't trust AI right now to completely write all my emails. That's just the way it is. If you have a good structure though, and a good template that you can feed into your ChatGPT or Claude or Perplexity, then obviously that works for you. But I would say that it needs to be semi-automatic. You need to have some sort of eyes on the email copy that you're doing, because AI would obviously always make it look very AI generated, and we want to make sure we come away from that. And then again, deliverability email setup is so big. Warming your domains, max 30 per mailbox, etc., etc. Again, there's a lot of individuals now on LinkedIn and online that talk about email deliverability. This has become massive over the last year, especially since I've launched my agency at the start of this year as well. So email deliverability is so important. We want to land in inboxes as opposed to spam folders. But again, that might be a video for another time. So then we move on to LinkedIn outreach, right? So LinkedIn outreach is very, very important. It's a very good channel as well as cold emailing as well. But one thing we need to do is, before we do any outreach, we need to make sure we treat our LinkedIn profile as a landing page, right? So whenever a prospect lands on your page, let's say you've commented on one of their posts, or you're just engaging, or you're trying to do some outreach to an ICP or a persona of yours, they will check your profile out, right? And they need to make sure, we need to make sure, that our profile is a landing page. Within 5 to 10 seconds, we need to make sure that our prospect or our ICP knows what we do within 5 to 10 seconds of reading our profile. So I'll show you a really good example of that in a second, of a really good landing page. But then we also need to build an ecosystem or an echo chamber of different leading experts on the topic of field that you're trying to engage your audience with. So if I'm talking about outbound sales, I also need to be commenting on other content creators / experts on their posts. So, and the reason we do this is because commenting is now the new posting, right? So we've seen I think I commented on somebody's post, somebody that I follow, one of the experts on cold email. I generated over like 500 impressions, but then at the same time, I think the same day, I also created a carousel, which took me 2 to 3 hours myself to make, right? But I got more impressions on the comment than I did on the actual post itself. So the algorithm's always changing on LinkedIn, but make sure to comment and find 10 to 20 experts on the topic or the field that you're talking about, and make sure to engage with their posts as well. And 9 out of 10, these guys are going to be posting 3 to 4 times per week as a minimum, because that's what they do now. They always want to stay top of mind. And what you can do is you can use bell notifications. So every time one of these guys posts, you'll get a notification straight away for you to go into that, like the post, and obviously leave a valuable comment, right? We don't want to just be like, oh, hey, looked great, that was a great workflow. You can obviously do that, of course, but we want to share something of value, something that's going to captivate and grab their audience. Because remember, everybody has their own audience, and we want to take their network and obviously start making them part of our network as well. So yeah, more on that later as well. But yeah, so social selling is a must in 2025. If you're not posting 3 to 4 times per week, you are not going to have trust from anybody, and you're not going to be able to build authority either. So if you're just first starting out, I started at the start of this year. Just post about things post about things you're good at, and also share the journey as well. People love authenticity, and that's what we're currently doing here today. So let's move on to the next channel. So the next channel is voice messages, right? So people pitch slap in the DMs on LinkedIn. Again, that works still, as long if you've got the right messaging, the right timing, and the right key stakeholder, you should get a response. But one thing to stand out from the crowd, from noisy inboxes, crowded inboxes on LinkedIn, is voice messages. And I talk about this a lot on my LinkedIn. I'm passionate about voice messages. I've used my voice messages in the past, and it's worked wonders for me. And the reason why is because there's a number of different reasons, but I would say in the world of AI, now that AI has boomed, voice messages, again, you can actually clone your voice using AI, funny enough, using the growth machine. But in the world of AI, we now want to humanize our profile. And we can do that in a number of ways. And one of the ways we can do that is with voice messages. And why voice messages? Voice messages creates curiosity and a mysterious approach. So if I send you a voice message today, 9 out of 10, you're going to be curious to see what have I got to say, right? So I sent, for example, in this example here, I sent one of my prospects at the time a voice message about a payment solution that we're selling, and then he replied with this. So he clicked. So without previewing the message, he didn't know what I was saying. He's obviously heard the message, and it has aligned, and it was relevant to him. So therefore, he replied. And in the same voice message, we can show our passion, we can show our personality. We can humanize our profile, like I said. And by humanizing our profile, we then step away from an AI-generated profile or whatever's going on at scale today. So, and I think it's only going to get worse. I think there's going to be more and more AI profiles, and before you know it, they're going to be engaging with an AI bot, right? So, how we stand out in the DMs is definitely voice messages. And again, I could do a separate video on this and how to do voice messages, but a sweet spot would be 30 to 40 seconds, addressing the key stakeholder by their name, maybe adding some sort of kind of social proof and the reason why you're reaching out, and why we can obviously help solve a pain for them or something you've observed. Again, trigger-based outreach works here as well. And if you do it right, I've seen a 30% reply rate with a good sample size as well. And like I said, we can actually scale LinkedIn voice messages using Lemlist and the growth machine. So they're the two channels so far. So the first one was cold email. Second one is LinkedIn outreach. And then we would speak about cold calling. So cold calling for me is something that I was doing at these bootstrap startups, and I was getting some really, really good results. I even booked in calls with the likes of ASOS, using a multi-channel approach on LinkedIn and also cold calling. And we've booked in some really, really good results in the past as well with cold calling. So I've only just started picking up the phones again at my agency. Sometimes you forget that cold calling is a very good way to get in front of your key stakeholders and your ICPs. So first and foremost, what is the first thing you need to do? So first thing you need to do with cold calling is just pick up the phone. Pick up the phone, and sometimes that just builds momentum, and it builds momentum. And well, like I said at the start of the video, if your data's bad, your outreach is irrelevant, right? So you can have the best copy, you can have the best sales script, you can have the best pitch or the best cold calling script, but if you haven't got the right data, it's all irrelevant. Your outreach is irrelevant. So what I would suggest is you power dial with accurate data. So BetterContact for me is really good, and I really recommend you go and check them out, especially for their emails, contact information. They use a waterfall enrichment. I think they take 20 different vendors until they find the right one, and you can use it inside Clay as well as standalone outside of Clay. And also their mobile data is really good. I had a prospect the other day say to me, "Where did you find my number? I've never put it online. This sounds super dodgy." Works really well with cold calling is permission-based cold calling. So why it works is, so I'll give you an example. You call up your prospect, you say, "Hi, John, my name's Michael. You wasn't expecting this cold call. It's out of the blue. But I wanted to talk to you about this X. Have you got 30 seconds?" Right? So this works really well. It is a pattern interrupt. It reduces the anxiety. So when I was cold calling last week all week, I realized that a lot of individuals today they're anxious when they receive a call from a random number, of course. And even I get it as well. When random people call me, I'm like, "Oh, who's calling me?" Because we save our numbers, and when you get random numbers, you assume it might be a sales call. So by addressing that and giving permission-based cold calling straight away, it reduces the prospect's anxiety, and also it gives them the choice and also frames them as an equal as well, which works really well. Again, it's not always going to work all the time, but you test this, you tweak this on different individuals. And the benefits are great of cold calling. So cold calling, I said I started doing it again recently, but you get faster feedback loops, right? So you can qualify at scale really quickly using cold calling. A 5 to 10 minute conversation with an ideal customer profile or with one of your prospects that's on your list does you wonders, right? So I had a conversation with an individual last week on the phone, and this lady, after 5 to 10 minutes, told me all the gaps that they currently have with their current provider, which I was able to take that information and then feed that back to my client, and obviously help build out the value proposition better. So you get faster feedback loops, which work really well, which you can then feed back to your team to then tweak your product or tweak your messaging, which works really well. We can also qualify out customers that are a good fit or a bad fit. So after a few minute conversation, you can ask various different questions where you can pre-qualify some of these customers. And if they're a good fit for you, great. If they're not a good fit for if you're not a good fit for each other, then you just qualify them out the pipeline a lot more quicker. So that's what cold calling can do. It is something that you will face rejection all the time. Don't get me wrong. You're not going to have 20 calls and 20 great conversations. That is unrealistic. And nobody has the holy grail or the perfect system with cold calling. Sometimes you just have to pick up the phone and just eat rejection for breakfast. And then lastly, reach enterprise clients faster, which I'll talk about in the next slide. But yeah, you want to reach your enterprise customers faster. So tier ones, tier twos, I'd always recommend picking up the phones and having a chat that way. So as I mentioned, we like to use a tiered approach. So there's a science to it, there's a structure to it. So I personally, if I was going to market into a completely new vertical, for example, I would target tier 3s and 4s using cold email at scale. So I would blast that out, obviously with relevant one-liners and relevant copy. And we do this because we want to first get message market fit. It also is a low barrier entry to actually reaching your key stakeholders. So it's a low costing channel compared to some other channels. And also you can spot the patterns on your sending tool to the personas. So which personas are replying mostly? What messaging is landing better? So you can test things and iterate things a lot more quicker, and you can change things around and A/B test very, very quickly and hit the ground running using cold email. So a 3 to 4 cold email step sequence with good email copy would yield you some really, really good results. And then secondly, I would use a multi-channel approach for my tier twos. So I will mix in cold email and also LinkedIn. So LinkedIn voice messages like we spoke about. And lastly, I would target my tier ones with cold calling. So get yourselves a power dialer, get yourselves an SDR that's just going to hit the phones from morning to the afternoon. So that is the three ways how we would build the top of the funnel. My name's Michael. I hope you enjoyed this video. Please subscribe to the channel, and we hope to do many more videos like this in the future. Thank you for watching, and catch you on the next one. Bye.